Hello, welcome to today's panel on privacy is normal. We have an absolute rock star group of technologists, cryptographers, and people who really care about privacy. So I'm super excited to dive in here. I want to start with our title, because I think our title is really says it all. But what does this mean for you? And maybe, Josh, we could start with you. What does it mean for you that privacy is normal?
So there's a little backstory with privacy is normal. It's actually kind of a meme, and there's like a manifesto that's out there that the Zcash team produced. And it actually came out of a conversation I had with somebody that was trying to figure out how to communicate the importance of privacy. It was really complicated. And I was like, Chris, privacy is normal. When you're going to, your daughters are done with school and they are standing outside waiting for you to pick them up, you don't want that information broadcast to the world. It's not safe, it's not secure. And he's like, oh my gosh, and he went and he wrote this whole manifesto and he put it out there and we put it back in our hip pocket. And then Tornado Cash happened, which I think we'll talk about. And so when Tornado Cash happened, we posted it up there and it kind of took off within the privacy community. So it's pretty cool to see now the title of something on stage.
And for other panelists, what does it mean for you that privacy is normal?
I think it became not normal, so I'd sort of give you the inverse, is social pressures to share everything we did online. But in IRL, privacy is normal. You expect to still have privacy in your home and in any private situations. So I really think that we diverged from that a bit because of the rise of big tech and data collection. But I think before that it was completely normal, and I think it's just we've got to sort of reestablish what that means today in the context of Web3 crypto. It's sort of been hit with a little bit of fear around AML and other compliance things, which I think those challenges exist in fiat, but you don't think about them. So, it's just got to be kind of come back full circle to self-sovereignty and being able to really control your own data.
Awesome. And Fahmi, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, what is normal now is that we have to opt out rather than opt in. So by nature, and because we want convenience, we often skip through and tick the boxes, and then we have given our data, our identity, our sovereignty to somebody else to own and monetize. So we want to get back to a place where we think about the concept of rational privacy, that I choose to share information, that I choose to tell you a little bit about me, a little bit of my assets, and that is a concept that I think we need to re-own. It's a fundamental right that big data and big tech has taken away from us. And the idea of Web3 and decentralization, we need to re-own the concept of privacy.
And Matt, would love to hear from you.
I just want to say, since I first learned about crypto and Bitcoin, right, the lack of privacy has always seemed like the biggest vulnerability. And it's been something I thought we'd fix. And instead, we've kind of gone the other way, and we've worked the lack of privacy into a feature that's now kind of metastasizing through the entire ecosystem. The lack of privacy is something we're not going to be able to get rid of, and it's very, very troubling to me because I don't see mass adoption of Web3 without some kind of privacy, and I think that's going to hold us all back.
So I'd like to talk specifically about financial privacy, because one of the things I've often heard, over the years is this idea that, we care a lot about privacy, but obviously financial privacy is different because, financial transactions, well, we have to be able to surveil those. We need to make sure that we, can be compliant with KYC or, otherwise compliant. James, you mentioned, KYC even in your intro. So I'd like to hear from you what you think, about sort of translating privacy into the financial realm, and I'd also love to hear thoughts on sort of like, what does it mean for that to be compliant?
So like on the financial privacy, we've been totally gaslighted, right? So we think, okay, we have these kind of safe, we've got these safe institutions. Now we're going to democratize it. We're going to make this decentralized. As Matt was talking about, like the biggest vulnerability with Bitcoin being that you don't actually have privacy. Like, what does that mean? What does that mean for personal security? What does that mean? Like we've seen now more and more, like just this last week, right? There was another attempted kidnapping in France. So now you have all of your data that's out there. James is talking about all of your data that kind of is out there on the web that we're just constantly sharing. People know where we live. The kidnapping in Paris, they weren't actually trying to kidnap a crypto person. They were trying to kidnap the family of somebody, which means they knew where the family was, how to find them, what the association was. Now we're going to take all of our financial data, we're going to use it on a public database for everybody to see. It can never be erased, so it's out there for all time, and it's going to be associated with all of your other financial details. And we think that's a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing also for national security, right? So governments and regulators will tell you, like, we need to be able to watch this stuff. And so let's keep it all transparent. The only reason they say that is actually they don't believe, it's not that they don't believe in privacy, it's they don't believe in crypto. Because if they were looking at it and saying, okay, crypto is going to be this decentralized self-custody thing that you can be able to use, and it's going to expose all your financial details, they would lock that down.
I'd say the threat to businesses is also that you don't want one business knowing all of your customers and then being able to, solicit from them. I think we're also accidentally, as Web3, walking into a cross-origin tracking problem. You have wallet sharing or your public address, which can be associated with transactions. That would also mean, eventually being able to tie it into, with fingerprinting and other technologies, being able to tie it into data. Because if you look down the supply chain, there's oracles you may be sharing your location with, which is also tying it to your wallet address. So it's a very big problem, and it comes up specifically in the use case of purchasing. Well, you also don't want censorship around your online access to social based on something that you purchased. Perhaps the social network bans you because you sided with one point of view that wasn't agreeable.
I spent 20 plus years in the financial industry. I was able to find price discovery, liquidity discovery, execute, settle, move margin, and nobody but my counterpart and my custodian knew. Today, if you do it on blockchain, even just the signal of moving collateral tells people your intent. It signals whether you're long the market, short the market, or other information. That is immutable information. So if you don't get docs today, you will get docs in the future. People will read into your signals. The same applies to information, social media, everything else that we do on the blockchain is there forever. And we have to recognize that privacy is normal. It is your fundamental right in your physical world, in your digital world. And we kind of have let the communication and the PR around it be taken away from us. And we need to bring privacy, or what we call rational privacy in the midnight blockchain, the ability to have both a public state and a private state, and to have information shared selectively as and when required. That could be a gateway to a transaction, it could be a gateway to lending, it could be a gateway to communication. So we think rational privacy will help with bringing adoption and bringing that normalcy back to blockchain.
Matt, what about you? What are your thoughts on this?
So, I mean, there are different kinds of privacy, right? So there's the Zcash and the Tornado Cash style of privacy where, every transaction you make, who you are, that's completely private. And I'm a big fan of that. Like, I like that style of privacy. But then there's the privacy you get from your bank, which is that, like, the whole world can't see all of your transactions. And that's the traditional financial system today. And then there's what crypto offers, which is like this nightmare of everybody sees every single thing you do. They can track you. They share information about who you are. And that world is not that's a whole different world we shouldn't be going into. So I'm kind of interested in the middle world, which is where we have crypto and we have privacy, but we also have compliance where, maybe my bank or my compliance department knows something about my transactions and what I'm doing. So you could imagine this is something that I'm working on right now with Forte and with Alio, which is we could do compliant private stablecoins, where the stablecoin issuer can track your transactions. They can see if you're doing something illegal with the stablecoin, but the whole world can't track everything I'm doing. So we have this whole spectrum, and we can find a place in there, but I don't like this far, crazy world where just everything is public.
And so I want to talk a little bit about where the rubber hits the road on this. Specifically, I would love to talk about Tornado Cash. And Matt, you were quite involved in a unique way. I would love to hear about your journey there.
So I definitely wasn't involved in Tornado Cash, so please don't tell anyone that. But I was involved sort of at the end when Tornado Cash got sanctioned. And one of the things that was the whole thing is super disappointing, right? I don't think the Tornado Cash developers did anything criminal. I think they launched a protocol. I think they got in a little deeper than they should have gotten in. I think they found themselves in a position where they launched a permissionless protocol that they couldn't turn off, and then very bad things happened. But at the end of the day, the sanctions came down, and they actually told them to shut down their code. They said GitHub had to remove repositories. And that just went way beyond kind of what we should be doing, right? Like, I can understand the idea of using sanctions and that kind of power to stop criminal activity, but at the point where you're taking down software, I think that's completely unreasonable. And I hope we have a slightly better balance now. We've kind of learned from that lesson.
For others, looking at what happened with Tornado Cash, how did that affect you in your work?
Yeah, so for working on Zcash, it was kind of a scary moment. What is happening? We have this law or a court ruling from 1996 saying that writing code is speech, and we can publish code. I think it's Bernstein, DOJ. You probably know that one well. And then we're saying, is that not true anymore? Can developers in this country go to jail for writing code that somebody else uses for something nefarious? And so that had really kind of a chilling effect for us that were developing software, reevaluating what we're doing. Like, as an organization, I had to go and say, okay, if I get arrested, or if the FBI shows up at my house, how does the project survive? I put a plan in place that says, okay, if I get a notification, because we have some friends in DC that says something might be coming, or I feel at risk, how can I get everything shut down in 2 days? And moved everything around the world so that Zcash can continue to survive. It's kind of messed up, right? Because we're trying to build something that is actually protecting for people, and this kind of realization that the government in this free country that we live in might throw you in jail for doing that. The other thing that we can't do as a developer is we write open source code, but we don't run any infrastructure. So I don't run any servers or anything like that. Other people do. Because if I run infrastructure, then I can be accountable for what happens on that infrastructure. And because somebody then chooses to money launder or something like that on a chain that I'm providing a server for, that puts me at risk of being in an enterprise.
I think it also becomes very difficult to enforce as AI is in more and more writing code for you. Like, what specific piece of the code is, breaking or creating a problem for AML or other, enforcers to come in and look at it. But it becomes very difficult to enforce. So I think it's one of those things, like, people will continue to push it further underground. It becomes harder to regulate that way too. So I think like whatever happens there, it's got to be, if there is policy developed around specific code that can't be written, I think it needs to account for the fact that it's gonna be an ongoing issue if they were to want to try and enforce that.
So I'd like to pivot to talk a little bit about usability. I think a lot of people trade privacy for convenience, but I think there's an interesting question of, is that perhaps in part because privacy technology is hard to use? Would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So I think what big tech has done is give it away, give their platforms away for free. And if you think about human nature, when you're going through an airport or a train station, you normally head to the exit in a straight line until somebody offers you something for free, a free drink, a free chocolate bar, and suddenly you'll deviate. You'll accept a change to your behavior. And big data has given away their services for free, and in doing so, you've accepted as an individual, as a corporate, that your data is going to be owned by somebody else, monetized by somebody else. And look at the wealth of the Magnificent Seven. And look at how they have created wealth for themselves using our data, our photos, our information. So it's getting people to understand, one, privacy is your fundamental right. You should be opting into sharing your data. And one of the things we think about within the Midnight technology is how do you abstract away that? How do the dApp builders bring that in? How do they offer a service where they can provide a free service potentially to their clients, their customers, their users, or they pay maybe a subscription model where the user is owner of the data. They own the metadata, they own their data, and they are transacting through a platform, whether it's financial, social, healthcare, and others. So we want to give the power back to the developers, to the dApp builders, to enterprises, but ultimately to the users to say, I'm making a choice and I see the value, but it becomes an easy choice for them.
So James is actually doing this with Brave. I think Brave is doing a great job, right? And it's just normalizing privacy when you're browsing. Say, I can go to Google that's going to farm all my data, or I could use Brave, and they're not going to farm all my data, and all these third parties aren't going to get it, and I don't have to think about it. Like, if we have to educate people, we've lost. Like, the tools have to be, the user experience has to be as good or better, that people want to come, and then it's up to the devs to make sure that they're delivering that. Hopefully we get more market demand. You can say, okay, I'm going to use a browser that's farming me, or I'm going to use a browser that's not farming me. I'm going to choose this one, and the experience is just as good.
Yeah, really, I mean, to that point, I'm not sure, but it really does start at the user agent. Brave is, developing tools that give you privacy by default, and so it does make privacy normal. I guess kind of going back to your first question.
Privacy is super hard, right? Like, imagine building a piece of IKEA furniture and you forget like one screw and the entire thing falls apart. Like, privacy is like that. Like, you screw up one little thing and everything breaks. And so just getting the user experience, like making it look pretty, is not always that easy. You have to educate users somewhat to tell them what to do. But at the end of the day, like, we're very good at doing those things, and we're getting very good at the UX. And we will get there. It just takes longer than the kind of the simple non-private experience.
So I'd love to also talk about central bank digital currencies. This is definitely a topic that I think is controversial among people in the crypto space. How do you all think about CBDCs?
They're an evil. It's just evil. So think about, okay, so we've had this system where you have $20 in your wallet, and you can give it to that $20, and it's fungible. It looks just like other $20, and nobody needs to know kind of any information about that. Now we're going to take that and we're going to digitize it. We're going to make it simpler to transfer that $20. Okay, great. So now we live in a digital world. That makes total sense. But we're going to put a number on it. We're going to pass it around to everybody in the world. We're going to be able to trace, as a government, we're going to be able to trace everywhere that it goes, everyone that's held it. We're going to be able to make decisions about whether or not we're going to freeze that money. Maybe we do a social credit system kind of thing. You're doing great, you're not doing great, your credit history is bad. Maybe we freeze your funds. Maybe you have a wallet and they don't like that address for whatever reason. Somebody's funds that was used in a theft over here, but they just use it to buy a bike from you. But they want to freeze that fund so they can get that back. Like, it's a dystopian nightmare, we need to fight against it.
So I also think that there's a risk to this with government approved stablecoins. If you look at MiCA in the EU, I think what could happen too is you could see just like very few centralized players that are sort of able to sort of get the approval from the government bodies, and then they'll still have these kind of controls built in, which look a lot like CBDCs with a different name.
So I remember we decided about 40, 50 years ago, we weren't going to have a national electronic payment system. We were going to have Visa and we were going to have MasterCard. Now look at this, right? Like, a lot of people think, a national payment system or a CBDC would be a privacy nightmare and the government would spy on you. But what actually happened is we got Visa and MasterCard who spy on us and collect all that data, and they can freeze people. So my big fear is everybody's terrified of CBDCs, but instead we're going to get a bunch of stablecoins, which I think are great. Stablecoins are fantastic, but left to themselves, all of the bad things that everybody is afraid of in CBDCs is just going to kind of move over to the stablecoin space, which means that the solution is if we don't want those things to happen, we have to think hard right now about what we want from those products, because otherwise we're right back in this situation again in 5-10 years.
So in closing, I would love to hear from each of you sort of what one thing or two things do you want the audience, both here and the folks watching in the future, to take away from this? Is there something they should be doing? Is there something they should have top of mind other than privacy is normal?
Well, I'd speak to developers. I would say that collect only what you can protect. Building for privacy is often difficult. It requires you to make some sacrifices, but collecting all data points isn't, going to necessarily fix your UX. You have to get out and talk to people. But integrating privacy in Web3 is going to require really looking at the entire supply chain. And speaking with developers, Web3 is maybe 2 to 5% of total websites online. Just making clear distinctions, being very transparent, privacy policies, data retention policies. Make it easy for developers to understand what types of data, if you're running RPCs, anything else, like what applies to your API versus your website. 8 times out of 10, I noticed that those things kind of be overlooked, but privacy, private details could be leaked practically anywhere, along the web platform. So I really want developers to make it a bigger priority.
Got to make it super, use the privacy tools that are out there and give those developers feedback. So use Brave browser instead of Google Chrome. Use Signal and Telegram. Use Zcash, download the Zashi wallet. That's my pitch there. But there's good tools out there, and the user experience is improving. And try those tools and get engaged there. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, it's very interesting. As I say, my career previously, I was very behind the scenes. I was known to people who needed to know me, known to my counterparties. In this Web3 industry, it's much more public. You have to make an active decision. I think about, I'm old enough to remember the world before the internet, and where your information sharing was to a select group of people. Now, when you go online, you have to be aware of who's going to see that information. To what Josh said earlier, that information exposes risk to you, to your corporate, to your family. And what we want to do at Midnight is to make it easier for developers to think about putting privacy at the heart of their applications, making it a consensual element for them and their users, that the user gets to choose, do I want to have the information owned by me on my side of the firewall, on my device, or do I want to hand it over to somebody else? And I think if we can make that easier to build and easier, almost you take that away, abstract that away from the users, that like Brave, it is built into the system. Your privacy is protected, and you choose to give it away. That's an important step that I'd ask everybody to consider and look at.
Matt, last word.
Wow. Okay. I just want to say, if you're a developer, there are so many people out there working on ZK, and it's so exciting, but everybody is telling you that scalability is what you should care about and not privacy. Stop listening to them. It's the same technology. Just add privacy. Use it the way it's supposed to be used. There's so much more we can do with that tech. That's pretty much it.
Well, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you all for being here, and thank you to the panelists.